How can a presidential candidate have 90 criminal charges and still run for president? Because it's not a disqualifier. You can be a felon and serve as a president, but you cannot vote as a felon. Makes little sense, but it is what it is. He isn't convicted yet. The reason that there is no blocker of running for president while under charges is to prevent a political party running for office to bring charges on their opponent in order to secure victory for themselves. While it sure does suck in this instance, it is incredibly important to prevent our elections from turning into those of Russia. I mean, I get your point. A candidate should at least look good. However, a person can have 1,000 charges. It should mean nothing. We should treat everyone as innocent until proven guilty. People get charged with stuff all the time and find not guilty or innocent. That charge should not then be held over them, otherwise what's the point? Charges aren't convictions. GIF. Because if charging, or even convicting, an opponent with a crime was all it took to disqualify them, that could easily be used in a corruption scheme. Many people even argue that charging Trump at this point is tantamount to corruption because it paints the obvious Republican frontrunner in the eyes of the public during the election cycle. On the other hand, diehard Trump supporters seem to be even more diehard currently. So, this razor cuts both ways, it seems. He hasn't been convicted of anything yet. Even if he does get convicted, then he will likely appeal. Folks that like Trump often say that anti-Trumpers are on a mission against him. And that is probably true. Folks that hate Trump often say that he is definitely guilty of at least some of the charges, but he will try to avoid them and pardon himself if he is elected. And that is also probably true. In the end, there is an old saying that you could indict a ham sandwich with a grand jury, and so if just charges or indictments could bar someone from candidacy, then nobody would ever be able to run because the other side would bar them by just finding a way to charge them for something. Because in America, you are innocent until proven guilty. Being accused of a crime, legally, means you haven't done it. It requires a court trial to determine guilt or innocence. Only convicted in court of law, people cannot run for office. This isn't new. It's only new because it's been sensationalized. Politicians have been getting away with crimes for as long as we've had politicians. I don't get it either. It's bizarre. Biggest question is, how are there people willing to vote for him? You ain't seen anything yet. Hint: the Constitution does not explicitly prohibit a man from serving as POTUS from jail. It can be done on Zoom. The founders, in building American legal framework, were deeply concerned about preventing tyranny, both of a tyrant and of the majority. To avoid this, they tried to build a constitution that put power in the hands of the people and assembled representatives. They saw danger in putting the power to restrict an individual's right to the presidency in the hands of the executive branch, because incumbents might want to retain power. See January 6. And in an unelected judiciary, voters have ultimate power to make decisions on this. Originally very filtered by elected representatives. Checks to a person's ability to be president are as follows. 1. The people directly. This is the most important check. American democracy is built on the idea that voters should and are able to tell when a candidate is fit for office. Voters get to decide if criminal charges on a candidate should be factored into their decision. It could be the case that charges were laid and a conviction granted because of corruption, or they aren't relevant, or the person had grown, etc. Right now, Trump voters likely are a combination of people thinking the charges aren't legitimate or they aren't relevant, or that the charges are actually a good thing. Likely. This is a reflection of the information those voters are receiving, and how that information shapes their decisions and values. 2. The Electoral College. Voters technically do not vote for president. They elect delegates to the Electoral College who then vote for president. These representatives were originally intended to be free to exercise discretion in their voting. They would, in theory, be able to represent the people by trying to understand charges laid against a candidate and make the decision they thought was in the best interest of the nation. Over time it became seen as undemocratic for electors to not follow the will of the state, and they became bound to a candidate. 3. Impeachment. An officer who is convicted in an impeachment proceeding is no longer eligible to run. Impeachment charges are brought forward by the elected House and then the Senate acts as jury. There is no set time in the Constitution that establishes when high crimes and misdemeanors must occur. A president-elect who had been convicted of a crime before taking office could theoretically be impeached on the first day of their presidency and convicted shortly thereafter. It's also worth noting here that senators were not originally elected directly, and they serve longer terms. This was intended to again allow them to act, theoretically, with more mind to the correctness of an issue than politics of the day. 4. The 14th Amendment prevents an officer who has engaged in insurrection or rebellion from holding office. Unfortunately, the amendment neglects to inform how it should be determined that an officer has done so, or how it should be enforced. Again, to allow the people a check on misuse. This can be overturned with a 2/3 majority. Ultimately, a lot of the structures put in place by the founders, or Reconstruction amendees, have shifted and eroded over time in a way that makes today possible. Ultimately, there remains one very powerful check to a potential criminal's ability to be president. The voters. Americans vote. The real question is, how can anyone support a candidate with 90 criminal charges? It's not Trump. It's the people who support him that is the issue. The way I look at it is, if it was 1840 and a black man wanted to run for president, it would have been the easiest thing in the world for his opposition to find some crime to hang on him. Pay off cops, a judge, a jury, whatever, to make him ineligible for office. The law assumes that the taint of a criminal conviction would be enough to dissuade voters. And if it isn't, well then that's up to the voters too. Another thought. There is sometimes the assumption that people can learn from their mistakes and can be rehabilitated. A person convicted of a crime in their 20s can learn a lot and be a totally different person in their 30s and 40s. Because the people who support him don't care, and rich, powerful people are never held to account. First, read the Constitution. There is only a few limited things that actually disqualify one from becoming president. Second, a criminal charge is not a conviction. Anyone can be charged with anything. Like it or not, he is only guilty if convicted. Third, most if not all of the charges are on shaky legal ground anyway and are mostly politically motivated efforts to keep him out of office. It is unlikely that he will be convicted of anything serious in a way that will stand up under appeal. I truly understand the general disdain for the man, but the Democrats are literally just throwing everything that can at him to see if something sticks. So far, nothing serious really has. Disclaimer: Trump is guilty as sin. 1. Trump hasn't been convicted of anything yet, and legally until he is convicted, he is presumed to be innocent. So it doesn't matter how many indictments there are. He's free to run. 2. Surprisingly, There isn't a restriction on running for president for people who have been convicted of crimes. 3. He hasn't been convicted because he has been intentionally delaying as hard as possible. Nearly any court decision is appealable and every appeal takes time. Normal people don't appeal decisions that are obviously correct. But he has money and zero shame. Edit. Trump may be disqualified under the 14th Amendment. The Supreme Court is going to make a decision on that, soon. By the plain reading of the amendment, he absolutely should be, and it would be in keeping with previous case law. But several of the justices may be highly motivated to find in favor of keeping him on the ballot. So who knows? Lots and lots of stupid people.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. TooAfraidToAsk is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.